Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we have with us a very special guest. Her name is Jen Araya Peters, and she is a visionary leader, a #1 best-selling author, and the founder of a global 129,000 strong healing community. She's best known for her revolutionary work in the field of inner child healing, in particular, dissolving emotional trauma, childhood trauma, and hidden blocks deep within the subconscious mind. Jen has a mission to make healing available to all. And I know we are going to have an absolutely fantastic discussion because that's the heart of what I do as well. So I know we have a lot in common as far as what we're going to talk about. So welcome, Jen. So glad to have you here today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tammy, and thank you for the invitation. I've been really looking forward to this conversation, so thank you.
Yeah, so tell people, and you don't have to go into everything because I know you've been through it all, right? You have quite a story, but tell people kind of how you a little bit about your backstory and how you got to be doing what you're doing today.
Sure, thank you. So, like many people, I have been through quite a lot, especially in my childhood. I guess my journey with trauma started as an adoptee. I was put up for adoption as a newborn baby. So even from that stage, there was deep abandonment trauma, feeling unwanted, unlovable, rejection, low self-worth really kicked off around that time. I was raised in a family with a father who was really very angry, a very, very angry man. And so his temper and his volcanic outbursts really ruled the home. My mum was codependent, so she spent a lot of her time trying to smooth things down and not, don't set your father off, that kind of thing. Um, but I have to say, right through childhood, I really carried a very deep sense of shame about who I was, but I could never quite put my finger on what it was about me. So by the time I got into my teens, even now at nearly 51, I really distinctly recall feeling deeply unworthy and really just wanting to be wanted and loved, and because I wasn't getting that at home. And so by the time I hit my sort of 15, 16, and in particular 16, I had experienced multiple gang rapes, actually being drugged and gang raped. So by the time I got into my later teens, there was even more trauma compounding there. When I was about 24, I met what would become my husband, and I was severely codependent. I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't even know it was a thing. It's your normal. You don't realize that other people feel differently and behave differently. But my husband at that time, he was very narcissistic. And again, this is a lot of years ago. So it was before even those words were mainstream like they are now. And so we were together for 14 years, and there was a lot of ups and downs in that. As you can imagine, anybody who's been in a narcissistic relationship will understand completely what I'm saying. It was through the marriage breakdown, though, there was a lot of infidelity, a lot of betrayal, and honestly, probably actually betrayal of myself, for continuing to be there and make excuses for certain things. But it was really through the breakdown of my marriage that kicked off my healing journey. And I will say that a few years into my healing journey, I recall actually saying to my husband one day that I would never want to relive that, but I was very grateful for what we went through, because it was because of what we went through that is what had set me off on my healing journey. I started seeing a healer very intensively for 5 years. It was through this time that I realized that I need to help other people feel like this. Like, other people don't know that this is even a thing, that it's even possible to feel like this. And so it was very early in my healing journey, actually, that I realized that this is what I'm here to do. And so I have been extremely devoutly committed ever since. And that's really what has gotten me to where I am today.
Perfect. And I don't want to say perfect, but it's funny that so many people like yourself take their trauma and their stories and they use them for good. I mean,
Hmm.
there's no, they say there's no testimony without the test, and you have survived the test. And I love I love a couple things that you said already. So we're just going to jump right into this conversation. But you pointed a couple things that already really stuck out with me. And one is that you're thankful for that narcissistic relationship. And at the end, it takes so long to be able to look back at something horrific and use it as an experience to grow. And
Hmm.
that's such a big part of the healing journey in general
Hmm.
is things are going to happen. I always say traumatic events are inevitable, but
Hmm.
trauma is not. Turning
Hmm.
it into trauma does not have to happen once you have the skills to be able to learn and navigate them. I look back at it now and I say so many of the things, if I had known what I know now as a 12-year-old, it would be a totally different world. But
Hmm.
that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to share, we're here to have these platforms to talk about how we can take these traumatic events and keep them from becoming some of the worst traumas out there. But I love that you're standing here today with a smile on your face. I love that you focus on the inner child work because I think it is so important.
Yeah.
So was that like was the inner child work the biggest part of your healing journey?
Without doubt, without doubt. When I actually first started working with clients, I was working specifically around narcissistic abuse recovery and dissolving codependency. But I very quickly learned that actually it doesn't matter what is going on in somebody's adult life, it is nearly always going to be a byproduct or a manifestation, if you like, of unresolved inner child trauma. And occasionally that trauma might happen when we're in our teens or our 20s, but the point is we dissolve it in exactly the same way. So, really, the answer has just about always been coming back to the inner child work. So, if we can dissolve and heal whatever is going on or went on in childhood, we can absolutely dissolve whatever's happening for you in adulthood. So, that is why the focus is there.
Absolutely. And I say that I did, and some of the things that they ask you to do when you're going through inner child work, the best way for me to explain it is they seem so weird until they don't. Like looking at a picture of your younger self on a mirror and talking to her and loving her and being her best friend. At first, I was like, this is crazy. Until one day, all of a sudden, that picture on that mirror shifted, and I saw the most vulnerable, innocent, beautiful child, which I was detesting when I first started doing this. So even the inner child work, that is a process. That is not something that happens overnight by any stretch of the imagination. But you can get there no matter how bad things were. Now, I you started the conversation too in saying that you had the adoption trauma and you were adopted right at birth.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's out there listening, I have a couple people on my podcast that have talked about adoption trauma because for the people that don't understand that, you just, especially when you're adopted right at birth, you assume that that child, if they were brought into this loving family and somebody wanted them, that you would never feel that feeling of abandonment. But
Mm.
it's not true. And I've learned to find that out. I was very naive about that because I just assumed, well, they wanted me when I was born. If I assumed that people thought if I was wanted at birth, yes, my mom may have, left me for whatever reason, but that new family grabbed in there. And it's not always like that.
Mm.
But, and so adoption trauma is a real thing. And I have a couple episodes on it. We talked about that in my summit. Um, your feeling of unworthiness and just unlovableness, do you think that stemmed more from the adoption trauma, or do you think it stemmed from the fact that your adoptee or adopted mother, the person that adopted you, that she was emotionally not there because of your father's moods or the way you explain that a little more?
Yeah. Great question. Really great question. So I actually, the way that I work, I will often take myself or whoever I'm working with back to a particular time. So it's less traditional, my approach actually to inner child work. And so to answer your question around the adoption, so I've gone back multiple times to when I was in the womb, because you're marinating in the frequency of whatever your biological mother is carrying and whatever's going on around her. So the feeling unwanted, feeling unlovable, feeling and as a result of the abandonment, that's where the low self-worth and so on comes from, usually or often. But in my case, it was definitely through that time of actually in gestation, and then afterwards, immediately afterwards, actually literally being abandoned. It is the separation, the emotional disconnection from your, in this case, natural mother,
Right.
that kicks that initial abandonment off. And then from there, you'll often get a cascade of other traumas coming in or other beliefs coming
Right.
in. And I've actually done well over, probably, I would say, at least 450 processes now when I've taken people back to the womb. So there's only been 4 times we have not seen quite impactful trauma out of the entire time. So we definitely do pick a lot up from that particular time.
And for the people again listening, it's amazing the studies that they do. And I realized it, when growing up, as I was growing up, and my mother was an alcoholic. She was doing cocaine when she was pregnant with me. There was
Wow.
so much adrenaline and cortisol and
Yeah.
unhappiness and fear and everything else that she was going through, having while she was pregnant with me. It's like my nervous system was probably shot before I even
Yeah.
came out of the womb, because you do absorb all that energy.
Yeah.
And it's no different when you're in the womb absorbing it from your maternal mother as it is when you're out there in the world, even as an adult, and you're feeling those frequencies, you're feeling that energy from other people around you. But yeah, no, that's very powerful when you
Mm.
have someone that has that. I'm going through that at work right now with a girl that is going through a very difficult pregnancy, and she's going with her baby's daddy or whatever they call him. I don't know. But
These days.
with the father, and he doesn't want anything to do with the baby, and he's having an affair and all of that stuff. And she's trying to be so positive because she's like, I know this energy is so draining on this baby. And she's trying so hard, but that even stresses her out even more, because then it adds another layer of
Mm.
anxiety and stress.
Mhm.
And so she's the guilt that she's, carrying just already. I said, just you've got to relax. You've got to do what take care of you right now. And it's easier said than done,
Yeah,
obviously.
it is.
But talk about, so your parents that adopted you. You said your father was an alcoholic and so very moody. So you spent your whole life, and your mother did, walking on eggshells, just with those volatile
Yeah.
situations. Do you still talk to your parents, or do you have a relationship, or?
So just to clarify, Dad was and is extremely angry, rather than alcoholic. He wasn't an
Oh, I'm
alcoholic, but
sorry.
he was,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, that's fine. A different set of trauma.
Right.
But he was very explosive. Honestly, now doing what I do now, I can see why was the way that he was. He was like a tantruming 2-year-old, but in a man's body. He had
Right.
never been taught how to regulate. And of course, I mean, I think he's 81, or actually he's 82 the other day, 82 now. And so back then they definitely did not know how to regulate, so things were very different back then. But he was like a tantruming 2-year-old. He'd be throwing things, swearing, yelling, threatening to, do you want a bite of this? And whipping off his leather belt to strap us. Um, so that definitely meant, yes, walking on eggshells, always feeling really unsafe really unsafe. And I have to say, safety has been one of the biggest things I've needed to, one of the most stubborn things that I've needed to clear within myself because of that. It was just such a part of my uh, fabric in growing up.
Just being completely hyper vigilant and waiting
Correct.
and reading rooms for danger and everything else. I know that feeling.
Places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yep.
anticipating, planning for, okay, if this happens, then that's going to happen. So then I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z to circumvent that.
Oh yeah, what should be normal situations, you probably are 7 steps ahead in
Correct.
defense mode. And that's
Correct.
very normal. So tell the audience, like, what are some things you did to heal from that?
So, I have mostly done the inner child work, but just to clarify, the way that I do my work is quite different from a traditional approach. So, I'll be connecting in with the parts of me that feel unsafe, and the way that I go in is a little different as well than a traditional approach. But we will connect with where that trauma is sitting in your body. We'll look at what physical sensations are sitting there, what emotional sensation, sorry, what emotions are sitting in there, what words perhaps are sitting in there. And then we connect with the actual, usually it's inner children sitting in that part of the body. I will find out, exactly how they're feeling. What do they need to say? Because chances are they did not get an option to use their voice when they were younger, or if they did, it probably didn't go well. I'll also look at exactly what beliefs those particular inner children have. Like, for example, with the feeling unsafe, they will have beliefs like, I'm not safe, people aren't safe, adults aren't safe. And then there'll be a whole set of patterns that actually sit with each of those beliefs, such as if the world isn't safe, it means that I need to be on high alert at all times and constantly, as you mentioned before, scanning for threats.
Right.
So we develop patterns as a result of our beliefs. So I'll go through a process like that. I will reframe those original beliefs. What's really important is getting right down into the nitty gritty and into the detail, and that's partially what allows us to dissolve it. And I will also then bring in actual healing energies and tools from the higher realms, and that literally dissolves those particular beliefs and patterns, which heals the trauma. And then we bring the inner child back in to fully integrate.
Yeah,
I know, a
that's
little detail, but hopefully that answers your question.
oh no, 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 it does. And so yes, it did. And that's beautiful because people out there listening have probably you're hearing a lot of different things from a lot of different modalities. You're hearing internal family systems, you're hearing parts work, you're hearing all of that with what you work, and you kind of integrate it all together, which is it's the whole body and mind approach, which honestly in this day and age you have to use. You can't just heal the mind, you can't just heal the body, you have to, it's all stored in your body, but you have to find the root cause. Everything has to go back to the root cause. And I agree with you in that. I mean, I've never found any of the people that I work with where the root cause isn't going all the way back or very, very far back.
Yeah.
It's always childhood, because those are the memories that you weren't mature. Your brain was not developed enough to give it, to reframe these things or to give it different meaning. All it meant, and so everything internalized and turned on you. You
Mhm.
weren't, your brain at 6 years old was not mature enough to say, oh, dad's just angry, it's not what I did.
Yeah.
You don't know that. So all you can know in your brain is, oh my gosh, this person that's supposed to protect me and care for me is yelling at me, so I must
Hmm.
be bad.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree. And I really do think that another extremely important aspect to healing fully, or healing as fully as we can, is the energetic aspect. It's the other piece. Um, yeah.
So do you do Reiki, or is there particular modalities that you work with,
Actually,
or?
I don't use anyone else's modality. Actually, this is something that I have developed just over the years, and it's still I work very closely with my guides as well, and whoever the higher self of the person I'm actually working with, and so we'll often be given different tools as we're healing, and I won't know what they are until we're actually in the healing. But using it's definitely not Reiki, but it is a form of energy work. And I think really anybody who does energy work, it will have their own, very
Yeah.
own sort of angle to it. Just like when you're doing therapy, it's going to have your own angle on it.
Yes.
And that's the same for me.
And when you do it long enough, you I know at this point have that intuitive sense, and
Hmm.
that's part of, you know what the client needs, and it's funny how the energy and just the universal energy, whatever you want to call it, is so incredibly powerful to be able to be in touch with that and be in tune with that. And if you can find an energy healer such as yourself, and I recommend people, if you can just find someone that can help you tap into your own energies. I don't know if we had this conversation. I'm a little fuzzy headed, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually had a stroke.
Mm.
And 10 years ago, it would not have gone the way it did 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I literally, completely paralyzed on my left side, was able to close my eyes and bring in what I call my white light energy, and filled my spot with it, and was like, okay, I need some grounding. I need my bubble to be really good and healing right now. And I look at my self-talk 10 or 15 years ago, what it would have been versus 3 weeks ago, when I was just like, okay, God, if this is the time, I don't think it is. I think you got bigger plans with me. But can we speed this along? Because I got stuff to do. You need to get me to the hospital. Like, I was so calm, and I was just filled with this like aura. Like, I literally filled my bubble, and I could tell the doctor was like looking at me, and he's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got this," you know? And
Mm.
it just, to be in touch with that energy is just so
Mm.
powerful,
Mm.
powerful.
Wow, what an experience for you. I'm glad that you've been able to move through that so beautifully.
It was, yes, because people, it was just, I came out of it like stronger than I went into it, believe it or
Yeah.
not, because it really showed me a lot about, you always question where you are in your healing journey. And there's a lot to be said for, reading the books. And that's why I tell people, get a coach, get a therapist, get somebody that's going to walk along beside you, because just reading about how you heal is not healing.
It's not enough generally. This is actually really quite highly specialized work. It takes a lot of years and thousands of hours to really master some of these techniques. Yeah, so I agree. I definitely agree. Even just to help you with the heavy lifting. And
Yeah.
hopefully whoever you're working with will actually teach you how to do what they're doing along the way so that you can carry that forward.
Right. And, like I said, when I had my stroke, it showed me 100% where I was in my healing journey, because my self-talk alone would have been so negative 10 or 15 years ago. I was
Yeah.
still in that shame cycle. I was still in that I'm not worthy enough, and this is just my time, and I got what I deserved. And that's would have been my self-talk
Mm.
15 years ago. But talk about give the listeners maybe some tips on, if, let's say, they're curious, because the people that listen to this podcast, it's called Adult Child of Dysfunction, so they're all over the place in where they are on their journey and what they're learning. I talk a lot about inner child work, but where would you give some tips as maybe some places to start?
It's actually a really good idea. So one of the things I would be doing is I would be creating a daily practice. Um, Now, it doesn't have to be every single day. Just aim for maybe 5 days a week, but creating a daily practice of maybe 10 or 15 minutes where this is your space. And it could be in the morning, it could be in the evenings, it could be before the kids wake up or the family wakes up, but just a time for you. And in that time will be perhaps where you, now I will say practice, start practice, because these things, it takes practice to be able to do them and get the results. So don't be disheartened if you do it for a week and go, oh my gosh, nothing's happening. It is actually literally a practice. So I always like to create a space that's quite nice. It might be a nice cushion or a nice chair that you sit in, or with a nice view or a nice blanket that you hold, but something that feels good for you. And also, when we do that, we actually charge energetically, we charge that space for that purpose. And some people like to use oils or maybe a particular piece of relaxing music that your brain knows, when I'm listening to this, I'm going to be going inward. So again, it starts to set up and support you in doing your healing practice. So I would look at doing things like practicing meditation. Start with guided meditations if this is the first time you've done them, because I remember when I first started, literally, I couldn't even go 3 breaths without my mind going off somewhere else. And I'd been doing some healing work for a few years at that point, but it still took a bit of time to practice. So practice doing meditation. Journaling is obviously something that a lot of people get a lot from. You can ask put a question at the top of your journal, something like, what does my higher self need me to know today? Or what does my inner child want me to know today? But just ask yourself a question and then just start writing. Um, Also, introspection is good, just going inward and reviewing different aspects. You may also want to do movement in this time, very slow movement in this time, or breath work. So there's lots of ideas for you to get started, but just put that 10 or 15 minutes aside, know that this is your time, and play. Just
Yeah.
play. I mean, visualizations are amazing. I love visualizations, and they are far more potent than people realize.
Hmm.
So that's what I would suggest. Have a play in that space and see what you feel like doing, see what you love doing.
I love that. And just there's so many different exercises. I like just laying down, and in a perfect world I would be laying on the beach or in the grass or something, outside grounded, but just literally feeling every little aspect of your body and what it feels like. Start to
Mm.
learn to get to know yourself. And
Mhm.
you probably, a lot of people out there, and I know I was at that point where I was numb to feelings, to emotions, to
Mhm.
everything. And it took a long time to be able to even go, oh, that's a funny feeling in my stomach. I wonder where that came from. But
Mm.
I love just laying down and literally starting at my feet and feeling every area, and just, do I feel a little tension there? And again,
Mm.
I'm not a Reiki master or anything crazy like that, but if I feel a little tension in my gut, I can now, or if I feel a pain in my back, I can literally bring myself from a 10 to about a 2 or 3 in pain,
Amazing.
just by visualizing that positive energy coming in.
Yeah.
I
And
I actually wait tables, and I waited on this lady. She was 102. And I said to her, how did you get to be 102? Like, what's your secret? She was like spry and nimble. And she said, every day since I was 21 years old, I sat down and I had a glass of red wine. And when I drank the red wine, I pictured all the positive things in my life coming in through that red wine and that glass. And then I went and I peed them out. Everything bad, everything negative went out the toilet.
how
And
funny.
that was her 75 years ago, literally just grounding herself and
Mm.
taking advantage of the positive energy in the world.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm. I
was her
love
answer.
that.
Very simple. She didn't have any training. She was 102, it was so cute. But she said, and then she would say to me, if I felt something negative, I just brought energy to it.
Wow. Beautiful. I love that. And actually, it just reminds me too, when I was listening to your example, it's so lovely. I was actually just doing that a couple of evenings ago. It's summertime here at the moment, and so the evening laying out on the grass is just beautiful. But I've got a free guided healing on my YouTube channel, and perhaps we can put it in the show notes, and it will actually help you to bring your dissociated energy back. and into your body and ground it fully. And because I know that with both of our audiences, dissociation, if we've been through a lot of trauma, a lot of us are going to be dissociated to a degree. So the grounding on its own isn't actually enough. We need to know how to bring our energy back into our body first. So
Mhm.
I'll give you the details for that so your listeners can use that. And it's just free on YouTube.
Oh, I would love to have that in the show notes for them, because a lot of people do it. Even when you start talking about meditating or just, relaxing, a lot of people, if you don't know how to start, you get this picture. I remember the first time someone told me to meditate, you get the picture of, the Buddha sitting there with his arms and legs crossed and woo. And that's not what it
Yeah.
looks like. But it's it's more stressful for people to try to clear their minds. People think I
Yeah.
got to clear my mind, and then they literally get more agitated. And it's just, no, it's focus on a leaf. And if you just focus on that leaf, and then when your mind starts wandering, just bring it back to that leaf. Practice starts small, because it's just about being, like you said, being able to harness back everything to the kind of here and now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this world, I mean, talk about dissociation, because um, we're victims to it.
Hmm.
People are like, oh, I'd never dissociate. And I'm like, yeah, when you stress out at work, you grab your phone and start doom scrolling. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you're dissociating.
Mm.
Anything to get, I mean, there's so many different forms of dissociation that people
Hmm.
don't even understand that they're doing it.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that, or?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I quite agree. I think that I'm definitely noticing a couple of very strong themes that a lot of people aren't aware that they're stuck in. One is dissociation, as you say. And in fact, this is a whole other conversation, but I do think a lot of our people who are diagnosed ADHD are actually dissociated. They're in flight. When I see them energetically, the energy is darting around all over the place. But if we don't know what's happening, we can't even start to actually, to overcome this. So I see that a lot. And the other thing I'm seeing all the time that really needs to get out there is there are a lot of people who are dissociated and stuck in freeze mode. And they may be high functioning, so they might even be in a really very stressful job, a very demanding job. They do very well at it, but they are feeling very numb and empty and stuck on the inside. It's almost like the description I get given to me a lot is it's like being stuck, on the other side of a glass window and watching everybody else passing by and they can't get there. Or perhaps we're aware of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, but it's like we're watching from a distance. We're not really fully engaged and present. But unfortunately, when we're stuck in freeze mode like this, we do feel very numb. We're numb to our emotions a lot of the time. Also, we are unable to connect. We can't connect with ourselves and we can't connect with our loved ones, our children. And probably what is a little concerning, really, is that our children can't connect to us. And when they
Right.
can't connect to us, we've got an abandonment trauma sitting there.
Yep. Yep. And then we're just perpetuating the cycle, which we're on
Correct.
these podcasts because we want to break that cycle.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
ultimate goal, is to heal enough to be able to pass those patterns down and to learn and to thrive. And because, like you said, the people that sometimes were our worst abusers didn't know any better. They just
Mm.
didn't have the coping skills or the tools. And you know I don't know if it was you that said this or the last podcast I was on, but who was it? Ben Franklin that said, with awareness comes great responsibility. Yeah. So
It
it's
wasn't
like
me, but I agree. Yeah.
yeah, it's just once you start learning, you can start being aware, and but at the same time, always giving yourself so much grace, because
Mm.
nothing that happened when you were little, uh, any nothing happened when you nothing happened before you knew any better that was ever your fault. I guess that's the best way to say it. If you
Mm-mm.
didn't know, you didn't know. And if it happened to you and you developed a habit, or you made a pattern, or contracted this belief, whatever it was, none of that was your fault.
No, that's right. And also, I mean, it's in your subconscious. I mean, when we are playing out certain patterns now, it's oftentimes, and I'm sure you've probably seen something similar yourself in your work, it's our little inner children who are sitting
Hmm.
in our subconscious mind, still hurting. They are playing out these patterns to keep themselves safe. That's what they're doing.
Yep.
And so when we're playing these things out in adulthood, that's exactly what is happening, which is really why we need to go back to those original little inner children and actually address their needs and tend to their needs. Because when we do that, they stop needing to play out those patterns, which means we stop playing out those patterns as well.
Exactly. And that brings back again, I'm kind of circling back around, but do it with somebody that knows, that can hold you accountable for even your own thoughts and emotions. Because if you are reacting from your subconscious, you don't know any better. So sometimes that's why a coach, a therapist, a healer, whatever it is, it's so good to have someone standing by your side to work with
Yeah.
you, to let you see and help you realize, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but wow, this is, I could literally talk to you all day. With, as with a lot of my guests, because I'm like, wow, I just feel like there's so many things we could talk about. But I love the guided instruction that you're going to give to people, because it is the easiest way to start. If you've never meditated, to do a guided meditation, and you can go on YouTube and just type in meditation for this, meditation
Yeah.
for that, and you can come up with so many. But I love that you offered one that you enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is a little different as well because it will actually help you. It will guide you through calling your dissociated energy back into your body because when
Mhm.
we're dissociated, it's usually out of your body. So, yeah, a lot of people have found it really useful. So hopefully your listeners will too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's, yeah, no, I love those things. So if people want to reach you, talk to you, work with you, tell us about your different platforms that you have.
Thank you. So I am predominantly on Instagram. So I am under at Jen Peters, one word, underscore soul guide, underscore healer. The details will be below. But that's where I will post daily. I do a lot of educational content. A lot of people get the, oh, is that what's going on here? So there's
Hmm.
a lot of educational content in there. And I do like to dive really deep into the detail because I find if we are too generalized, it barely scratches the surface. We need to go deeper. So you'll find a lot of that content there, a lot of tips of how to. And I've also got my book, Coming Home, which does touch on my story before going into actual processes that you can talk yourself and walk yourself through. And I also have available one-on-one programs. I have a mentorship coming up, which is a hybrid of a one-on-one program with except within a group. So you'll still
Okay.
get a lot of high touch in there, and I'll be guiding you through six of the main primary inner child trauma themes. So we'll be healing those together, and those details you can feel free to drop me an email or drop me a note on Instagram. Happy to send those through. And last one is my website, www.jen-peters.com.
Perfect. And I will have all of that in the show notes. So if you guys are driving, don't stop and write. You can get it all in the show notes, as long along with the guided meditation that she brought. I love that. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'm not going to let you leave yet. You're not off the hook. We've talked about so many things and you've given so many golden nuggets. If you had to leave the listeners with one more thought, what would it be?
It would be that there is so much more here for you. I know that you've been through a tremendous amount, but I want you to know that there is so much more here for you on the other side of your healing. So please don't lose hope. And there's so many resources that are available to help you along your way as well.
Perfect. Very well said. Well, thank you so much. And for everybody else out there listening, you've heard it again. Here we go. Another story, hope and healing. And Jen has been through a lot. And like she said, this is why she does what she does, because It doesn't matter how much you've been through. You can get to that other side. You were born beautiful, amazing, joyous, and happy, and you deserve to have that back again. So it's worth every second, every podcast you listen to, every coach you work with, every guided meditation whatever you are doing to get closer to that original divine, beautiful creature you were born is worth it. So thank you, and you have a blessed week.